Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tiff Talks Tech, where we break down the messy, the misunderstood, and the wait, are we still doing that? Sides of multifamily marketing and technology. So today it's going to be a solo episode, and I want to talk about what's been driving marketers crazy for years, and it continues to drive me crazy pretty much on the daily, and that is lead attribution, specifically why it's still broken in multifamily, and what we can do about it. I remember early in my career, I'd stare at reporting and I would just take that as gospel. Ah, yes, the lead came from the website. Great. But how did they get there? What influenced their decision before they ever filled out that contact form? The more that I dug in, the more I realized what we're working with is incomplete, and it's often misleading data. So today we're going to call it out and we're going to find a better way to move forward. So buckle up your seatbelts and let's get going. I want to start with the basics. Lead attribution, it's just how we give credit for a new lease or a new lead. And it's the system that says this prospect came from this source, and so that's what's working, right? In theory, that's supposed to be super helpful, but in practice, not quite. It is often how we justify our marketing budgets, optimize different channels, and we show value to our leadership. And with budget season kind of around the corner, I know it's starting earlier and earlier every single year. This is something that I think is going to be so important in the next few months for everybody, including myself, even being on the vendor side. I have to see what's working, what's not working, what are we going to do more of, etc. Here's the truth. In multifamily, the attribution systems that we have, they're often outdated. So we're trying to track a modern renter's journey with tools that were built for a linear, one-touch decision-making process. And that's not how people shop for apartments anymore. So why are we still tracking things that way? It's a great question that I just asked myself. Let's break down the problems with this. So first, there's that last click bias. So most CRMs only track the final thing that a prospect did, like click the contact us button or calling from the website or even interacting with your chatbot. And that can be helpful, but it ignores all the steps that they took to get to that point. Maybe they saw a TikTok. Maybe they saw your Google ad, visited an ILS, searched your name directly, or talked to a friend about your community. But in your CRM, the way it shows up is a direct website visit, which doesn't attribute for all the things that could have happened before they directly came to your website. Second, call tracking doesn't tell the whole story either. I am not anti-call tracking at all, but I just want to be honest, it only captures that one action and not all the influences there as well. So if a prospect saw a YouTube pre-roll ad 3 times before they called, that doesn't count at all, right? Third, the journey is not linear, like we said earlier. So people might be engaging with your brand over weeks. They'll follow you on Instagram. Maybe they're reading your reviews. They'll ask a friend who lives there. Like I said, they could just be walking by, but none of that is really showing up in your CRM system, right? Fourth, the human factor. So often when people are coming in, we're asking them, how did you hear about us? Or they're filling that out on the website. Most people, they're either going to skip that or they'll just say, I Googled you. But that's not really actionable data. It's just a guess. And even from them, you're just guessing that that is how they found you. Even thinking through my own habits, like on Instagram, I get sucked in by the Instagram ads all day long. And I like it. I know a lot of people don't like the tracking aspect. I enjoy it because I want content and I want advertisements that I'm going to like. And I may see an ad 3 or 4 times before biting. I may open the link on that ad multiple times before going directly to that website. Who knows if that's actually getting tracked properly? It may not. The fifth thing is disconnected systems. So your property management software, your CRM, ILS platform, ads, they don't all talk to each other all the time. That fragmentation, it leads to blind spots and gaps that you can't really reconcile for. Sometimes there are companies, I will say, that have, like, I'm just thinking, not selling my own products, but I am thinking about effortless ads. We have action pages. So people will be sent directly from an ad, a pay-per-click ad, to that action, kind of like a landing page. And so you can track all the action that happens on that one page from that specific source. However, that doesn't necessarily even just tell the entire story all the way around. So they may have clicked on that pay-per-click ad, but it doesn't say, yeah, if they visited your property, drove by, whatever, it doesn't count all of that, right? It just counts that one journey, that one part of the journey, which is very insightful and I highly recommend. But again, how are we going to find the whole picture across the board? So, what's the cost of this broken attribution? We'll end up making decisions based on this incomplete data, and we may even slash budget from something that might be working just because it doesn't get the credit or that last touch. Or we may overinvest in channels that show up in reports, even if that is, like I said, just that last stop, not necessarily the driver in that decision. Here's the problem. What do we do about it? The answer is not to get a better CRM. It's actually shifting our mindset and our values. So we want to adopt a multi-touch mentality. It's not just a game of single source credit anymore. Most people, they need multiple touch points. So use tools that allow you to track assisted conversions and get comfortable with knowing that it is partial credit oftentimes. Attribution, it's always going to be imperfect, and people, they're not going to convert from just one ad, one post, or one email most of the time. Marketing's job is to build momentum, not necessarily closing those leads. And that's something I was always taught, that your job is to get the leads in the door, but you're not responsible for closing them. So here's some tactical ways that you can apply it. You can use UTMs and source tagging consistently, making sure to track every single link under your control, your email links, social ads, listings, etc., with specific UTM parameters. And that gives you better visibility into how people get to your site, especially over time. A pro tip for that, even use UTM links for offline QR codes at events and things like that. So any kind of on-site resident event, you never know who's stopping by. Next, you're going to look at assisted conversions, not just necessarily that last click. Use GA4, your CRMs, or ad platforms to analyze first touch, last touch, assisted conversions. Any interactions that played a role but weren't necessarily that final. Here's an example. A user might click on a social ad, visit your site, bounce off, and then Google you 2 days later and then apply for your property. That social ad technically deserves the credit, right? Next, you can build multi-touch dashboards. So instead of focusing on one magic number, build a reporting dashboard that shows you the channel engagement over time, the journey flow, first, middle, last touch, and campaign interactions by user ID or email. That does sound pretty involved, but if you have the time and the resources to do it, you'll see patterns and not just isolated conversions. And it will pay off in the long run because you will more accurately be able to decide what to allocate those marketing dollars to. Next, you can collect qualitative feedback. So you can add a custom form to your fields, like what influenced your decision to reach out today rather than how did you find us. You can use open-ended answers and resident surveys and post-tour follow-ups as well. Then you want to pay attention to the patterns, even if your CRM can't exactly quantify them. And another thing you want to do is collaborate with your leasing teams. Leasing agents often hear things like, I saw you guys on TikTok, or my friend lives here, or I saw you guys on Instagram. Train your team to start recording that data and treat it as valid input on what's actually working. Unless you want to redefine your success metrics. So instead of only measuring by leases or form fills, consider your branded search volume growth, That shows your awareness is growing. Think about your social engagement trends, which indicates your influence. Your lead quality by source, not just the quantity of leads that you're getting, and your resident lifetime value. Are certain channels bringing better renters, longer renters? That's data that you want to analyze, and it may feel daunting to analyze it. Like, how often am I supposed to be looking at this? But even twice a year, just look at it. It is important, and make sure that you're putting that into your schedule. You'll also want to supplement with qualitative data. So make sure that you're doing things like resident surveys, leasing team debriefs, even looking at those DMs on social media. Sometimes the clearest signals of what's working is what people are telling you and not just what the software is tracking. So make sure you're listening. You want to build for visibility, not just for conversion. So set up those UTM parameters, create those dashboards, and focus on which content is moving people, not just closing them. And you want to ask better questions. Like I said, that mindset shift of instead of where did this lease come from, you could try which touch points helped build better trust. And that kind of shifts the way that we're thinking about things. Now, when you're thinking of which touch points helped build trust, some of those touch points I want to talk about because we want to make sure that we are focusing on these and even offering them up as a possibility. So you could think of your property website. What builds trust there is having clear photos, easy navigation, transparent pricing, and then also any kind of chat features or quick responses. Those also really signal reliability. Your Google profile, making sure that that has up-to-date info, accurate hours, photos that helps build your credibility, and responding to those reviews that you're getting, especially the negative ones. I know this is something that has kind of gone around, but just kind of remembering that people, they're not going to rent necessarily just because you have a 5-star rating. That actually does not build trust. It actually helps when maybe you have a few negative reviews, but you are able to respond to them and you're able to fix what was wrong. That actually shows credibility, and that when there is an issue that arises, which is typically the case with any living situation, even in my house, I have issues, except I can't go to anyone but myself because I'm the homeowner. But with an apartment situation, you do have someone you can go to. So, how quickly are they going to fix that? Online reviews, like I said, Google, Yelp, apartments.com, anywhere that people are leaving them, making sure that you are responding and showing that you really care. And then there's those branded search results. So a search for your property name, it could have a well-curated list like website, socials, maps, reviews, not just one channel. They want to be able to see that you're consistent across the board everywhere that you are listed. So here's that bottom line. Lead attribution in multifamily, it is broken. Not because we're doing it wrong, but because the system was never really built for how renters actually behave. And instead of choosing a source of truth that doesn't necessarily exist, we want to think about complexity, multi touch influence, qualitative signals, and that brand trust. Because the better question isn't where did that lead come from? It's what helped them choose us specifically. If this episode hit home, I'd love to hear from you. So please shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or comment with how you approach attribution or how you may even be rethinking it. And if you love Tiff Talks Tech, make sure to follow, share with your team, and leave a review. Every bit helps. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.